So Introduction to Farm to School BC and Grant Writing webinar. We've done this for the past couple years, and it's useful for kind of an overview of the grant itself, give you some different ideas of ways that you can create projects, how you might be able to link into animators in your community, and some just basic tips on writing the grant as well. And then in the latter half of the workshop, we will be having a little bit of a breakout room. So my name is Marcus Lobb. I am the grants coordinator for Farm to School BC, also the provincial manager of recent. I've been working in school gardens for a little over 12 years, started in kind of an urban agriculture sense, and then shifted more into working directly with students in the gardens. I'm coming to you today from the unceded ancestral lands of the Wickaninnish, which is the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations here. So I'm based just outside of Victoria. The agenda that I mentioned just a moment ago, the regional breakout rooms that I was talking about, it's going to just really depend on how many people attend the meeting today, but essentially it's a chance to meet with a staff member of Farm to School BC and bounce around a little bit of ideas and give a chance to ask a little bit more focused questions so that you do it in a smaller group, not needing to do it in the larger webinar. Then we have a couple closing items as well. In terms of just a couple housekeeping items, if you did have any pressing detailed questions, I do have my colleague Madison, our communications coordinator. She is joining us today to help. If you had a question that you really needed answered while we were doing the presentation, I could probably have a moment to be able to answer a few of those. So just go to the bottom there on the icons and put the hand up kind of icon there, and Madison will flag it and let me know. Please do keep your microphones off during the presentation unless you're to ask a question as well. So, okay, so Farm to School BC is a program that brings healthy, local, sustainable food into the schools across British Columbia and provides students with hands-on learning opportunities that develop food literacy, all while strengthening the local food system and enhancing school and community connectedness. Farm to School BC empowers students and school communities to make informed food choices while contributing to vibrant, sustainable regional food systems that support the health of people, community, and the environment. So what you see here is kind of the major pillars. This is the work that we really focus our attention and energies on, and have been for the past 16 years. In that time, we've funded over 300 schools from across the province, and we directly support 22 school districts. That's in our regional hubs, our animators that live in 8 hubs across the province currently, that they're supporting directly those school districts. But of course, as a provincial organization, we are always wanting to support school districts and schools that they're anywhere within the province. We support K to 12, including independent and First Nation schools. We are a program of the Public Health Association of BC, and we are supported by the province of British Columbia. If you live anywhere in the Greater Victoria area, the Public Health Association is going to be hosting a conference that focuses on planetary health. It's going to be coming up in a couple weeks, and we're going to be tabling there, and there's going to be lots of other good sessions. So take a peek. So I mentioned just a moment ago, we have regional hubs, and this is just a kind of a basic map of sort of the areas that these animators exist in. It's important for you to know this in case you happen to live in one of these regions, because you can reach out to the animator themselves, who will be able to support you a little bit in your application process or just in some of your projects in general. They'll also work with you closely should you receive funding from us as well. And here is just a little map of our team there on the right-hand side. Of the different animators. If you go to our website, we have a drop-down menu of who we are, and it will show you all of their contacts, and you can reach out to them. So it shows the school districts that they're associated with. It's not just the Capital Region or just Kamloops, for example. It's an area that surrounds them and associated school districts. Just a little bit about those community animators. So they work in each of these hubs. And they support, the support varies across the hubs. They will help connect you to local community organizations. They'll support you in resource and one-on-one time, help connect with your local school district, networking and learning circles and professional development. That's kind of the main focus of what these animators do in these communities. I myself was an animator here in the Capital Region up until this year. And so I've got a lot of experience in this, and I can say that it's if you reach out to us, we're always there to respond and to try to help out with your projects. So just a little bit about some of the different kinds of projects that we fund, although this is not an exhaustive list. We fund a lot more than this, but it's just to kind of throw out a few of these different ideas, just so you understand, like, we are not just school gardens. We are many other things, including indigenous plants, and we've seen examples of foraging and fish becoming interested for schools, and especially in indigenous communities. So yeah, so this is just a list, and just to say that we are always looking to expand what is Farm to School BC, and often a lot of these ideas here kind of came from teachers and made us rethink, like, oh yeah, I guess that would be considered, farm to school, or that would be considered like healthy eating, food literacy. So we just want to make sure that that's known when we put out these grants each year. So we have lots of resources on our website to help you plan your program and generate ideas, including our section on starting a program. So if you go to our website, along the top of the bar there, you'll see a bunch of different drop downs of teacher resources, etc. And I actually wanted to just take a minute to pull up that website just to show you a couple of important details there that can help you in your project. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing and then restart sharing from a different screen. Okay. Okay, so I just pulled up right here. So this is the drop down. Maybe I can see Dorada in my screen. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the drop down that says school gardens. Yeah, awesome, thank you. So under here, you can find a bunch of different resources on school gardens. These are just different curriculum connections, etc. Also over here is starting a program. So there's some really great stuff in here that will help guide you in potentially where you might want to take your program. You might already have your ideas fully formed. If that's the case, then it's maybe not as important, but just if you're still looking for ideas or trying to work out what you're going for, those are there. Under our grants, you can see this is where you would go and log on for it there. And then just a couple other tabs here. These are old webinars that are just useful. Our School Garden Mentorship Program, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is designed to support those who are funded each year in building the culture and committees at the school garden level, helping establish the garden, take maintenance, engage students, et cetera, et cetera. We just wrapped that program up just about a week or so ago, but it starts in January. And of course, our newsletter, if you sign up to that, you can get all the kind of basic updates, et cetera, that are going on. So yeah, so that just a quick walkthrough of our website. And then before I was mentioning how you can find out about our team and our regional hubs, and this can be, you can go take a peek there to find out, hey, do I have an animator in my community that I need to reach out to? So that's where you'd find that there. Okay, let's get back to this presentation here. Okay, so I just wanted to give just a couple of examples of some schools that were funded actually 2 times from us. So they had received a startup grant at one point and then came back a few years later and got top up funding, scale up funding. You can go either direction with how you apply for your grants. That wasn't always the case with us, but we have adjusted that over the years. Where in some instances schools will look to just have a little bit of funding to sort of test the waters, and then a few years later they might want to have startup funding and kind of take it to the next level. So these 2 that I'm going to show you both are examples of that. So Arthur Hatton, which I believe is in the Kamloops area, they started with just simple microgreens that you see here at the bottom. They did that for a few years. It was really successful. They kind of integrated into their snack program, and that led to an interest in starting a garden. So they re-asked for funding from us, did some fundraising, and started like a planter box style garden on the side of their classroom, originally with 3 raised beds, and then they kind of went all in and got support from their admin and et cetera, and put in 6 more raised beds, put in fencing, irrigation, and et cetera. So that was just kind of one example of a school that, you know, kind of took their time to develop their program. And another one is Wickaninnish, that's out on the west coast of Vancouver Island. So they had a really nice school garden that was already existing, and then they wanted to take it to the next level, and they started, this shows just when they were starting. I got to see it planted about a year in when we went and visited a couple years ago, but they started a little food forest this was kind of in the area, I'm pretty sure, where the buses just did a big kind of turnaround here, and they turned this into like a little bit, maybe like a permaculture, I think they might have defined it as, food forest right in the front there with perennial trees and whatnot. And, they have a really great program there, but just an example of a couple of different schools kind of taking it in their own different ways, and it's just so that you don't have to think entirely in a box when trying to decide what the needs are of your school and community. So I just had a question that I wanted to see, you know, what are you hoping to learn today? And so just take a moment to just put it into the chat box. I always like to ask this question when I do any sort of kind of workshop, both in maybe I'll hope to be able to pivot and offer some of the answers today, but if not, I always do keep this and reflect upon this when planning for the workshop for next year. So what you're looking for can really influence to make sure that this workshop is useful for future teachers and hopefully even today. So I'll pull up the little chat so I can take a peek. We'll just maybe just take 2 minutes for this. Some new ideas for school gardens. Okay, that's great. When we do the breakout, that's going to be a chance for people to talk a little bit about that. Wanting to write a grant for a school and wondering if we're in a grant write-up. Sure, we're going to go through the details of pretty much exactly, without giving you too many tips of what we're looking for. Learning how to write grants. Yep. Grade 4 teacher in Surrey hoping to start a small school indigenous plant garden. Okay, that's great. We have a really wonderful guest access. We have a really wonderful resource on our website called Learning from the Land, all about starting indigenous plant gardens. I highly recommend taking a peek. It's on our website. It was in one of those drop downs there. How to complete the application. New ideas. Okay, thank you, Monica, Ashley, Krista, Michelle, Nicole, Doretta. Okay, wonderful. Feel free to type any more in there, and I'll come back and take a peek at them when we're doing the breakout. So, applying for a grant, for our grant. As I mentioned, we have 2 different grants. We have the so-called startup grants, which are up to $3,000, and we have the scale-up grants. Historically, we would ask schools to do the startup first, and then you could come back 2 years later after completing your final report, and you could apply for the scale-up. That's not the case for this year. You can apply for just the $1,000 grant. Usually we kind of split it, where we give an equal number of startups and an equal number of scale-ups. In some instances, when schools do apply for X dollars, we will bring it to our review team, and they will sometimes make recommendations to offer a percentage of the amount requested based on their own kind of feedback. Usually that's no less than 75%, but just to say that sometimes does happen. They may make a recommendation to remove a part of the project if they think it's too expansive and maybe not feasible. But usually we try to give as much as possible. And usually with the $1,000 grants, we usually give the full amount of that. So just a couple details, and it is due November 13th. That's a Sunday night, I believe, at midnight. We tend to be pretty strict with these coming in. Of course, if you have it in by 9 a.m. that day, we'll still accept it, but we do get a lot of applications. So ones that come in late, we usually, unfortunately, do have to turn away. So just keep that in mind, please. All of this information is on the actual application form if you go there, but I just wanted to go over a few in case anyone had any questions while we're going through it. I'll try to be as detailed as possible. So you must be K-12 school. That can be independent, that can be First Nations, and located in BC. As we already mentioned, if you are in a regional hub, we encourage you to reach out to one of your animators, although this is not a detail that would hinder you getting the grant in any way. We're just kind of recommending that it could be useful for you to do so. We are always trying to encourage more rural and remote schools and First Nation schools to apply. That's something that our funder wants to see. So if you are, identify as those, please do. If you're, in more of rural areas, we want to see those applications come in. And that is partly just because a lot of the applications we've seen over the years do come from more urban centers, because the communications are a lot more active there. There's a lot more community, gardening programs and things like that are always looking out for the best interest of schools and their catchment and stuff. So that's a big reason why. So we do want to have an equitable lens in that. So exclusion criteria for the startup grant is that you cannot have received this before. The startup, you can't get it twice. And you cannot have received the Farm to Cafeteria Canada Salad Bar Grant, unfortunately. That's the $10,000 salad bar grant from Farm to Cafeteria Canada. If you're unsure if you've received either of these, you can just directly email me. You can find my contact there, grants coordinator, Farm to School BC. So the scale up, that's the $1,000 grant, pretty much the same eligibility criteria, really. And just to keep in mind, you cannot have received this specific grant or the Farm to Cafeteria grant as well. So it really is kind of similar. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you have already received a startup grant and you're looking to receive a scale-up grant, you must have completed the startup grant final report. So again, if that's something you're like, oh wait, have we done that? Just reach out to me. I have it all on file and I can let you know, but that is important. You can't take on another grant without completing the final report. So take note of that if you're curious, and just send me an email and I can respond to you tomorrow. So documents and tools. So just to say here is that when you click on these, the startup grant or the scale up grant application form that says in brackets for reference, that's really just for you to potentially fill out that form on the side to like almost as a draft. It's not the thing that you're going to submit. When you do submit, you actually click on the submission button and it brings you into a portal where you fill it out. So this actually happens incorrectly quite often. People will take this form, fill it out, and email it to me. We want you to go through the portal, because then it's stored in our website and then it's just there forever. And it's great because we can analyze the data a lot easier than having an actual PDF piece of kind of paper essentially show up in the email. So when you are filling out the application, you can move forward and backwards while filling it out, but you can't save it. So it really is something that when you're going to sit down to do it, you're going to want to do it all at once. And so that's why a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll fill out the majority of the content into kind of the draft form and then just basically copy paste it over. You can leave it open on your desktop and it's not going to go anywhere, but just so you know, it's not something you can save and come back to in a couple of weeks or anything like that. We don't have that option with our application form. It'd be great to have that in the future. The program budget form for the grant, this is also something that will come up and you will through the portal. And so this just shows you what it's going to look like as well. It's just a PDF. So you'll upload the completed version when you go through that process, I call. To help you with pricing estimates, the Farm to School BC budget calculator is something we created a couple years ago, and it has a bunch of different tabs and allows you to go through. I think the next slide here gives a little bit more details. It's broken down into different sections. So if you're looking at maybe an outdoor garden or an indoor garden or a salad bar or cooking equipment, we have just kind of a general overview of what the expected costs might be. And this will help you in kind of getting an idea for what your grant might be, what you might be asking. So as we did create this a couple of years ago, we haven't updated it yet this year. There will be subtle changes or more than subtle changes due to inflation. So just keep that in mind. But we're not looking for, precise, perfect down to the dollar a lot of times with our grants, like as long as it's close. And so we wanted to create this. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to build a bunch of garden beds, this can give you kind of an idea of a ballpark. And it's more for your own planning to think about what's feasible when putting in an application. This just shows you a little bit of what it looks like. Didn't transfer over super well here, but it shows on the left the activity, potential items that could be involved in doing those kinds of activities, some descriptions, some price estimates. We actually make some suggested quantity amounts based on students of 25, group of 25s. Then we have some pricing there. This one just all shows blank at this point, and then links as well. So this can be a pretty useful tool to use if you're feeling, especially when we originally created it, was to kind of make it easier on teachers who are strapped for time instead of digging around with Home Depot and being like, what does it cost for all these things? The idea was, here's a tool that can help you get a ballpark estimate of what it might look like for your project. If your project's very simple, you can probably just go to your local hardware store or wherever and just get the exact costs and just add it in, and that's fine too. It's a little bit more for kind of bigger projects. It's how it's often used. So I just wanted to walk through the actual application form and point out just a few little details to keep in mind. So for contact information, the main thing that I wanted to pass along here is that the lead applicant must be a representative from the school. So it is schools that apply for these grants and schools that house the funds. So we get a lot of requests for community partners who want to apply on behalf of schools. That's not how this works. We're funding schools. The co-applicant can be somebody who is outside of the school. That's fine. You can have all of your kind of team outside of the school if that's what's going to work for you. But the lead applicant must be a staff member at the school. So what's important about the contact information, especially of these two people, is this is who we're going to reach out to when it comes time for reporting. And so if any of these people are going to change during that year to 16 months of when you will have the grant and be looking to report, you will want to think about updating this information, reaching out. So just keep that in mind when thinking about who these people are. Will they still be here in a year? Because that's going to be relevant, because this is who I'm going to reach out to when it comes time for reporting. So, these are the actual I didn't pull out all of the questions, but I pulled out a few of the questions from the grant application that I find a lot of people will ask. Please briefly describe how you will use this grant, how you plan. Your plan will integrate farm to school values, including the following. So think about how it connects to those. We realize not every one of the projects is going to connect to all three. If they do, that's amazing. That's a really robust program, but just keep that in mind. And then the bullets down here are just some recommendations for drafting it. So be detailed with what you're going to do, show the actual outcomes, state your goals, who will be impacted, how many. Keep your project simple with tangible outcomes. A lot of times I think that there's this notion that doing a whole bunch of things is going to be the best route for a project, but it often means that a lot of the different areas might suffer because you're trying to take on too much. So really think about how strong is your committee at the school level, how much capacity do you have, and how is that going to relate to trying to ensure that these things are reached within a year or whatnot. So keeping it simple is totally fine. So just wanted to mention that. And then ensure your timeline aligns with the reporting period. And so what's the key part of the reporting period there is that the funds are spent at that point in time. Like obviously the project would be nice to have finished at that point in time, but the one major detail is that you will be submitting a final budget and that the expenses must be spent at that time. So that's just something to keep in mind. And if it's a startup grant, the $3,000 grant, that would be, the reporting would be May of 2024. So in terms of project sustainability, long-lasting sustainable projects create more opportunities for students to get involved. So some programs do not require long-term sustainability. It might be as simple as field trips and a very little, just a little project that takes place over a course of a few days. So you don't need to explain a long-term sustainability for something like that. It's more about like garden projects, something with larger infrastructural investments, things along those lines that we're looking to let us know that this is not something that's kind of maybe just going to be a pet project of one teacher, but is that it's really going to be embedded in the school culture and would hope to be around in a few years. So applications that have considered expenses, those expenses long-term will be graded higher, and logistics are also an aspect of sustainability to consider. So like how is your team going to work to ensure that it's going to be long-standing or have investment from community partners and things like that. So try to let us know what your long-term goals are, if there is long-term goals of your project. So for school and project team, we only really require 2 additional members to your team besides your lead applicants. And as mentioned, some of these projects for $1,000 might just be a very simple project. And so if it doesn't require a large team, you can just let us know that in the application and explain why. But usually we are just looking for at least 2 additional members to ensure that it is a bit of a team effort at this point. And so you'll look at it like this. There'll be a number of boxes that you can fill in, but again, we're just really looking for a couple extra. So school administration support for any proposed Farm to School BC program, school administrators must be informed and have pre-approved your application. So that's just a yes or no question. We do want to see that answered yes. It's crucial because if you're planning any landscaping changes, any infrastructure stuff at your school, it will require at minimum your local school admin and possibly facilities groundskeeping input. Especially if it's has anything to do with water access, site assessments, etc. Also, additionally, and this can sometimes become a challenge, is to ensure that there's communications between yourself, if you're not admin, and your admin at your school around how the funds will be administered, where they will be housed, to make sure you have easy access and can be reimbursed in a timely fashion. I have seen experiences where programs have been derailed because of a lack of continuity and communication between a teacher or partner and the actual school, and funds are kind of somehow lost and different things like that. So just make sure you have that conversation early on and ensure that you're going to have ease of access to getting those funds so that you're not sitting around with a big visa bill. EHO requirements. So really, we're just trying to encourage you to know that environmental health officers can be valuable points of contact for assisting schools in ensuring that their farm to school projects meet regulation standards if they involve using food. So mostly what we're trying to speak to here is the planning and the serving and consumption of food. So like health and safety around that is what we're talking about. So just something to keep in mind. And we used to, this question we used to ask for you to actually reach out to someone and find out in advance. But now we just want you to tick off that you recognize the importance of it, and we'll follow up with food safety. Madison, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, quick question from the chat.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 additional members should be members from your community, like farmers or maybe PAC members. Can you please give more details on that?
Yeah, they can be, it's really a lot to do with what your program is. Like obviously if your program has nothing to do with farmers per se, let's say your program was more about local foraging, or maybe it was an indigenous plant garden. Well, that might not have a whole lot to do with a typical agricultural farmer. For the project team, it's really just trying to bring in other members to the project, especially if it's a larger project. So what we'll often see associated with these project teams, we often see a lot of school garden grants come through. So often what you'll see as a project team is that you'll have reached out to a local organization that will provide workshops or will help consult the building of the garden. It might be your principal at your school. It could be members of your PAC. It could be a number of different people who are involved. It could be just parents, other teachers. A lot of times it'll just be a grant application will come through of a group of teachers. So it's really just trying to build out to show that this is not just one person trying to lead this project, which in our own experience, they tend to not be as strong when it's only one teacher or two, and having a team built up around it can lead to more sustainable projects. It's not the only thing we look at, obviously, when we're considering a project. If a project is very simple and by having two teachers on the team looks like there'll be success with it, there's no need to have a big, huge team, right? So is there any other questions at this time? No? Okay. So for the reporting of the startup grant, the progress report, we have a very basic progress report, which we get in touch with you. We're kind of going through a little of redefining what this looks like at this moment in time, but it's essentially just a short online report, a recommendation to submit some pictures about your project, and really just to check in and see how things are going and see if you need any support. The final report will come in May of 2024, and that's a little bit more of a robust online reporting form in which you'll submit your financials, some program pictures, and some different details about who was impacted by your program project. And it takes about 30 minutes, and I will be reaching out at that point in time. I usually give you a month heads up, and it's a link that you follow. For the scale-up grant, because it's only $1,000, we've shortened it, and there is no progress report. It's just a final report that would be due at the end of October of this year. So the funds will be giving out basically right at the end of December, early January, and that would give you 10 months to initiate your project and spend the $1,000. And so it's similar to the startup where there's a form you fill out talking about its impact, you submit some pictures and your financials. So just wanted to go through a few just grant writing tips, and maybe some of this might be a little bit redundant, but recommend sharing the responsibilities with your teammates because there are some different pieces. You can maybe get them to fill out, one person fill out the budget, others can do the contact info, etc. Always try to keep in mind if your answer is concise and review the question. One that we often will see is when we'll ask how will you plan to spend the funds, or what will your project look like from this funding? People will often talk about what already exists at the school and what they're already doing, and it can become very difficult to understand the difference between what they already have initiated at the school versus what they're intending to do with this funding. And sometimes it can be so difficult to understand that we don't know until we actually look at the budget. So keep that in mind, to not feel a need to writing a whole bunch in a section in an answer doesn't necessarily isn't always necessarily needed. Being concise and really talking about the outcomes and how you're going to do it is recommended, especially because we usually see about 100 of these applications come in. So you make sure that yours stands out and is clear of what the goals are for your project. This is just a grant writing tip in general for this or other grants that I wanted to put in. It's just kind of looking at the language that's used in the question a lot and trying to specifically use that language when answering. It's a really good tip that I feel like I would recommend to you when you go out and look even for other funding. So it can be useful to keep that in mind. Have someone else proofread it before submitting is always a really good tip, and try not to leave it to the last day. Anything you want to report out from your discussion?
Sure, yeah. Obviously, tons of amazing sounding projects and some really cool models that I think would be really exciting. One question or one sort of piece that came up was just wondering around, like, if a school has applied for the startup before and they were unsuccessful, is it more beneficial to potentially apply for the scale up and ask for less money instead? Or is there, what I guess what would be the benefit maybe of switching to a smaller funding request, if there is any? So
for the kind of quick answer to this is we definitely, if you were funded, let's say, if you applied last year and didn't receive it, we want to figure out a way to make it work for you for this year. So feel free to reach out. I know that when we send out our communications to those schools that weren't funded last year, we let them know if they have any questions, they're welcome to reach out. Some do, some don't. Feel free to reach out and to try to, we can pull up your application. I can take a quick look at the review process and identify maybe a couple of the key pieces. I mean, in some instances, it's just the competitive nature of a lot of these grants. There's so many applications, so it's not always like the grant was not worth being funded or anything. It's just kind of the competitive nature, but we can definitely open that up and look at your application and maybe make a few recommendations. And we definitely want to try to get funding to you. If you applied last year and took the time and you're still wanting to do that project and you think you know how to improve it, then let's work together to get that application in. I'll just say that. Any other questions, Marco, from your group? You good? Okay, how about Roanne from your room?
Yeah, again, like very exciting to have all these educators keen to start these projects. One question was, there was questions around budgets and clarifications on that. And one was, again, bringing back to your comment about not mentioning existing things or past things that the school has done, and clarifications around that, in the sense that if what they're applying for now is a part of an existing project that has different pieces, like what does that really mean in talking about not really mentioning current projects? And yeah, so
it's a good question.
That, but you might want to.
No, it's a good question, and I didn't want to overemphasize not speaking to what your project is, because there's a question we already within the grant ask about, kind of what's going on with the culture at your school, et cetera. It's just to make sure that when you're talking about how you will use this funding, that you'll be specific about where it's going to go. Think about your budget and then think about how you're speaking about what you're doing and how those things can be associated. Just to say that sometimes we'll get these applications where we'll read through what the project is and it's very unclear about what they're doing. And literally you'll get to the budget and you'll open it up and you're like, oh my gosh, they're starting a compost project. And like from what they put earlier, it wasn't clear because they're talking about all the other really amazing things that they're doing at their school. And it makes it sound like we're supporting those things to continue, not something new that's being added to it. So it's okay to talk about what you're doing at your school, especially if what you're about to apply for in terms of funding is to bolster that and really take it to the next level. That makes sense. Just ensure that you're talking about, this is what we want to do with the funding. Yeah, I think I probably talked in circles earlier, so I hope that makes it make more sense.
Oh, thanks, Ruckus. And I also just wanted, Ashley, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, did you want to speak to what you brought up in our chat room?
Sorry, what's that?
Oh, so Ashley.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
I'd
okay.
be happy to. Hi.
Hi there.
I'll try and keep it short, but I am a farmer based in Victoria. I manage a farm that is in a modular growing system. So we use kind of these interwoven fabric grow bags, and it's kind of a scalable system. So Marcus, we've worked with you before and you've been down to the farm in the past, but we've set up, we've kind of partnered with different community-based organizations and schools to set up different sizes of these gardens. So we've set up about 5 schoolyard, we're calling them micro farms, and essentially they're 400 containers that we set up in rows, and we can set up in a day and sort of help facilitate the startup. And yeah, they've been extremely successful, and I'll throw a link to our website where you can look up community partnerships and sort of see what it looks like. But yeah, we've partnered with high schools, elementary schools, nonprofits, and we're looking to kind of continue that process. So please reach out and let me know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. We have maybe just one more quick update. Maybe Angie, anything out of your room worth noting? I know I was in that room, but I joined a little late.
It wouldn't be, there was a lot of sharing and tips of starting the gardens and resources. So I just wanted to share a few ideas that came through because I think they'll be great. Nicole actually brought up a really great point about utilizing any feeder schools or nearby high schools for any activities of building or maybe constructing. Say in that situation, there was a bench that was constructed from a secondary school student for their garden space. So that was like a nice addition to have the seating there. So yeah, just reaching out to other schools nearby, seeing if there's that opportunity for a buddy or a mentorship. And one of the other schools was thinking about getting stumps for some seating areas. And that was kind of brought up that reaching out to community members are almost always willing to donate or to contribute to the school, as it's their community as well. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to partners and to ask them for any supports with materials, or if you're trying to think outside the box.
That mentorship piece is really crucial too. I'm glad you brought that up. Like that's, if you can find, and often what people will, when they get interested in this, is they get inspired because they see another garden, but look to reach out to those people and ask, like, what were your kind of steps and what were the things that you would impart in terms of wisdom for moving forward. And often there can be recommendations of take baby steps when starting these kinds of projects and just kind of feel it out to make sure it works for your school and whatnot. But yeah, having a mentor as part of within your community that has a long-standing program at their school is a really good advice. So, okay, so we got 2 minutes left. I just have a couple slides I wanted to pull up here. So just a reminder, the grant applications are due the 13th. These slides will be up on our website in the next few days, including the recording. Feel free to share it to those who maybe couldn't make it today. And I know there was a bunch because we had a huge number that were going to potentially be there last week. If you do reside in the hubs, feel free to reach out. There's my contact down below. You can also find it on the website. And this is pretty exciting news that has just come out really recently, is that we are actually going to be hosting sort of our first ever Farm to School conference. It's going to be in Vancouver, May 17th to 19th. 17th is field trips, 18th and 19th is the proper conference. So we are looking to launch our website in about a week's time or so. And with that, we are going to also be putting out a call for abstracts for those who have stories to tell or want to come provide workshops and whatnot. So there's going to be lots of information going out with this. If you want to keep in the loop, sign up, follow us on social media or sign up through our newsletter, and we'll be giving updates along the way and letting you know when we'll be opening up registration, which will be sometime this winter. Yeah, there's my contact if you want to get in touch with me. And then there's our links to our social media below. And there's for connecting to us through our website. Thank you for joining. If there's anything that's pressing or you're like, oh my goodness, he didn't even talk about this detail, feel free to reach out. I will respond. I'll let you know. I know that we don't get to all the details of how to write this application, and sometimes it can be confusing. It's even confusing to me. So feel free to reach out, and good luck with your applications. We hope to be able to fund as many of you as possible. We always want to see the money flow into the community and get these projects rolling. So thank you so much, and we'll be in touch in the near future.